Thomas Edison, from a deaf boy rejected by his teacher, to a great inventor who changed the world. Thomas Edison is considered one of the most influential figures of the millennium, making great contributions to the formation of the modern world. When talking about him, people will immediately think of inventing the electric light bulb, the record. But few people know that hearing defects were an important factor that helped him create era-changing innovations. Thomas Edison is considered one of the most influential figures of the millennium with inventions that changed history. Endless why questions. Thomas Alva Edison was born on February 11, 1847 in Milan, Ohio, USA. From an early age, Edison had abnormal behavior. Even though he was the youngest child in a family with up to 6 brothers and sisters around him, Edison had to be 4 years old before he learned to speak. Because he was slow to speak, he was only allowed to go to school when he was 7 years old. At school, the boy continued to cause trouble when he refused to pay attention to the teacher's lecture but only focused on asking why questions and pursuing the answer to the end. Thomas Alva Edison was born on February 11, 1847 in Milan, Ohio, USA. From an early age, he had abnormal behavior. Edison's teacher therefore soon felt tired, angry, and then impatient with his overly curious student who only liked to act on his own. Because of his lack of concentration, Edison's grades at school were always flat. Edison's teacher therefore soon felt tired, angry, and then impatient with his curious student. If at the present time, psychologists could determine that Edison has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, and prescribed medication to treat it, but at that time, teachers only simply assumed that it was because their students had intellectual problems. Edison's homeroom teacher often believes that his students' unusually wide forehead and significantly larger head than his peers are signs that Edison's brain has problems. If at present, psychologists could determine that Edison has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. 12 weeks after Edison entered school, he overheard the teacher telling the school administrator that he was a stupid child and that if he continued studying, it would only be a waste of effort. Immediately, he burst into tears and ran home to tell his mother. Luckily for Edison, he had a mother who was extremely understanding and loved her child. He overheard the teacher's disparaging words. Immediately, he burst into tears and ran home to tell his mother. Another anecdote recounts that an elementary school teacher wrote a letter to his mother. Edison asked her about the content. Her eyes filled with tears as she read each word to her son. "Your son is a genius. This school is too small and there are no teachers good enough to train him. Please let him teach himself." In fact, his mother lied. The content of the letter was, "Your son is an idiot. We will not let him go to school anymore." Another anecdote recounts that an elementary school teacher wrote a letter to his mother saying she looked down on Edison. Since then, he dropped out of school and was tutored by his mother in history, literature and language subjects. The turning point in Edison's life occurred when he was 9 years old, when his mother gave him a basic science book that taught him how to do scientific experiments at home. At this point, Edison found his passion. Since then, he dropped out of school and was tutored by his mother. At the age of 9, his passion for science began. All the experiments in the book were tested by him. He was so passionate that he used all his savings to buy chemicals for experiments. Just like that, he had his first science laboratory located in the basement of his family's house. All experiments in the book were tested by Edison. He also used all his savings to buy chemicals for experiments. However, Edison's father, who loved letters, wanted him to pursue social studies. To encourage his son to read the classics, Mr. Samuel offered a reward of 1 cent if Edison would step out of his room to read. The reward will increase to 10 coins if you read a whole book. However, Edison's father, who loved letters, wanted him to pursue social studies. On the surface, Edison happily complied, but in fact he only did it to earn money, and all the prize money was soon used by him to buy chemicals for experiments. He later revealed that to ensure that everyone in the house did not take the precious chemicals he had, Edison labeled all the chemical bottles in his laboratory as poison. On the surface, Edison happily complied, but in reality he only did so to earn money to buy chemicals for experiments. Made a splash throughout London. To expand his knowledge, Edison began to read more science books. Once he finished reading the family's library, he turned to tinkering with all the science books in the local library. When they saw that their son had a special passion for scientific subjects, his parents hired a tutor to teach him physics and chemistry for a short time until the family's economy collapsed and stopped. To expand his knowledge, Edison began to read more science books, even reading all of his family's books. When he was 12 years old, Edison got his first job selling vegetables to neighbors in his neighborhood. Taking advantage of the empty land behind his house, Edison came up with the idea of growing vegetables here and selling them to make money. Having saved up a fair amount of money, he gave part of it to his mother and then bought the rest of it to buy books and chemical experiment equipment. When he was 12 years old, he grew and sold vegetables to earn money to buy books and chemical experiment equipment. With more experiments happening, the demand for chemicals became so great that it prompted him to apply for a job selling newspapers on the Grand Trunk train. Edison did so well selling newspapers that the train company reserved a warehouse car for him to store vegetables, and he also used it to practice his chemistry experiments. He also applied for a job selling newspapers on the Grand Trunk train and was given a separate train car to both sell newspapers and do experiments. With a favorable job, Edison gathered enough money to buy an old printing press so he could produce and distribute his own newspaper. The newspaper publishes an issue every week named Weekly Herald. Edison, as a director, did everything from being editor, typesetter, printer to getting news, advertising, or publishing. But soon, the newspaper was dissolved due to a major incident when Edison did a chemical experiment and carelessly burned down his entire editorial office. Therefore, the train company did not let him work on their train anymore. However, the newspaper was dissolved due to a major incident when Edison did a chemical experiment and accidentally burned down his entire editorial office. Fate with the electricity industry. Edison came to electricity very accidentally. In August 1862, while at Mount Clemens Station, he saw June Mackenzie, the young daughter of the station attendant, crawling on the tracks in front of a moving locomotive. He rushed forward, picked up the baby girl and gave it to her father. Edison came to electricity very accidentally. When he accidentally saved the daughter of a station employee. To repay the favor, the father taught Edison everything about telegraphy. Edison learned very quickly, and soon became an excellent reporter who could send or receive information to anyone. The telegraph job opened his way to the electrical industry and changed his future. To repay the favor, the father taught Edison everything about telegraphy. This job helped him get into the electricity industry. The first steps into the field of invention. Edison's first invention was the lottery recorder, a machine that records the results of voting. But this invention was the first failure in his invention career. The reason is that Edison spent a lot of capital on this invention but could not sell it, so he had nothing at the age of 22. Edison's first invention was the lottery recorder, but this was his first failure. However, that incident did not affect him. Even though he loved making money when he was young, making money was just a means for Edison to pursue his own goals and interests, which is inventing. Then the god of wealth began knocking on his door when his second invention was the imprinted telegraph. The first customer to buy Edison's invention was General Lefferts. His second invention was the imprinted telegraph. The first customer to buy this invention was General Lefferts. Initially, Edison only intended to sell for between $3,000 and $5,000 United States dollars. But the customer was a high-ranking official, so he asked General Lefferts at what price he could buy it. Lefferts said that the price of this machine is reasonable at $40,000. This was a number beyond Edison's imagination, so he quickly agreed. Lefferts said that the price of this machine is reasonable at $40,000. This is a number beyond Edison's imagination. And this first transaction was an important turning point in his invention career because it brought Edison success in many aspects. In addition to the amount of money being larger than expected, it also compensated for his belief that his inventions could be used by people around the world. And this first transaction was an important turning point that brought Edison success in many aspects. Inventions that changed the world. During Edison's scientific research life, his greatest and most famous invention was the incandescent light bulb, which brought light to humanity. To turn electricity into light, Edison did thousands of experiments to find suitable materials to make light bulb filaments. Even when he continuously encountered failure, he remained undaunted and remained faithful to his aspirations. During Edison's scientific research life, his greatest and most famous invention was the incandescent light bulb. After thousands of failures, until one day, Edison accidentally touched the dangling button on the button of his jacket and exclaimed, "This is it. This is what I will use as a filament." Next, he put the thread into a nickel mold and heated it in a furnace for 5 hours to turn the thread into charcoal. After letting it cool, he took the thread out and put it in a glass container that had created a vacuum inside, so that the thread would not be burned, and then passed an electric current through it. After thousands of failures, until one day, Edison accidentally came up with the idea of using thread to make a light bulb filament. Edison was nervous, not knowing how long the electricity would last. But the result was very satisfactory when the filament glowed continuously for up to 45 hours. That invention freed people from the limitations of daylight and created more working time each day. As a result, the filament glows continuously for up to 45 hours. That invention freed humans from the limitations of light. Later, with his colleagues, Edison also created many devices to improve and innovate technology. His inventions expanded the development of telephones and telegraphs as well as low-cost communications. He also turned the typewriter into a handy office tool and also played an important role in the development of storage batteries. Later, with his colleagues, Edison also created many devices to improve and innovate technology. The phonograph and motion picture were also two fields that he pioneered. Edison was also the first person to build a radio but did not pursue it until the end due to pressure from other jobs. In the field of construction, he was the first person to research the cement production process, concrete mixing ingredients and the method of building buildings by pouring liquid concrete instead of stacking bricks or blocks. Together, Edison also developed a method for separating iron from low-quality ore. To ensure there was enough iron, he made the most of low-grade iron ore, which was considered worthless. He also pioneered many fields such as phonographs and motion pictures, cement production. In total, during his lifetime, he received 1,093 patents and filed 500 to 600 other patent applications that were unsuccessful or abandoned. By the early 1870s, he was famous around the world and considered one of the leading inventors at that time. In total, during his lifetime, he received 1,093 patents and filed between 500 and 600 other patent applications. Genius is 2% inspiration and 98% drudgery, is Edison's famous quote about the spirit of tireless study and hard work. During the 84 years of his life, he worked an average of about 20 hours a day. At the age of 75, he reduced his working hours to 16 hours a day. During his life, he read more than 10,000 books by eating less work time to consume 3 books a day. Genius is 2% inspiration and 98% drudgery, is Edison's famous quote about the spirit of tireless study and hard work. Grotesque element. There was one factor that shaped Edison's personality in both positive and negative ways: hard of hearing. According to records, around the age of 12, Edison began to lose his hearing. Later, he was completely deaf in his left ear and lost about 80% of his hearing in his right ear. It was reported that Edison had hearing problems after he was slapped by a train conductor for causing a fire. There was one factor that shaped Edison's personality in both positive and negative ways: hard of hearing. Edison himself said that he was injured after the conductor pulled his ear and lifted him up while the train was moving. But some historians later said that Edison's hearing loss was due to a fever he had as a child. Some people also believe that it is due to genetic factors because his father and one brother are also deaf. Edison himself said that he was injured after the conductor pulled his ear and lifted him up while the train was moving. The cause of this condition is debated, but there's no doubt that Edison really liked the fact that he was hard of hearing. Because he said that not being able to hear the sounds around him made it easier for him to concentrate on his experiments. This is especially important because, as mentioned above, Edison only attended school for 3 months, so he did not learn much about mathematics, physics and modern engineering. The cause of this condition is debated, but there's no doubt that Edison really liked the fact that he was hard of hearing. To compensate for those shortcomings, he was forced to use his mind and memory to patiently perform the necessary experiments and draw important conclusions. His hearing loss, but not total deafness, kept him from being distracted during such times. To compensate for those shortcomings, he was forced to use his mind and memory to patiently perform experiments. The brilliant inventor's only regret about not being able to hear clearly, according to his revelation, was not being able to enjoy the beautiful sounds of birds singing. To satisfy his hobby, even though he could not hear clearly, he still raised a cage with up to 5,000 birds. His only regret was not being able to hear the beautiful sounds of birds singing. Proposal like no other. Besides his inventions, Thomas Edison is also known as a quite funny person when he proposes in a unique way. Accordingly, at the age of 24, he was the owner of a quite famous enterprise. One day, he came before the gentle, elegant secretary Mary and said, "Miss, I don't want to waste time saying useless things. I would like to ask you a very short and clear question. Do you want to be my wife?" Besides his inventions, Thomas Edison is also known as a quite funny person when he proposes in a unique way. Completely shocked and surprised, the girl accepted with a red face. Immediately after that, a quick wedding took place with the blessings of friends and colleagues. After giving birth to Edison's 3 children, Mary passed away in 1884. Immediately after that, a quick wedding took place with the blessings of friends and colleagues. Later, Edison often went to Boston and stayed at the house of a friend named Gilliard to chat. On a beautiful day, Mina Miller, an 18-year-old girl, was invited to Gilliard's house as a pianist and singer for a party organized by Gilliard's family. Immediately, this talented and charming young girl captivated Edison. Later, Edison often went to Boston and fell in love with a talented young girl named Mina Miller. After getting to know each other, Edison taught Mina how to use Morse code so they could communicate secretly and tap each other's hands this way to chat when other people were around. Then one day, Edison suddenly sent Mina a Morse code as a marriage proposal. The wedding was then held on February 24, 1886 with the attendance of many famous people. After teaching Mina how to use Morse code, Edison suddenly sent her a code as a proposal. Thomas Edison later died in New Jersey at the age of 84. His last words to his wife were, "It's so beautiful out there." And to this day, Edison and Mina still happily rest together in the memorial garden behind their house. There are thousands of tourists each year who visit the scientific research projects that this couple has created. The works they leave behind will always have a special meaning for future generations. Thomas Edison later died in New Jersey at the age of 84. His last words to his wife were, "It's so beautiful out there."